I think probably makes sense that we briefly introduce ourselves here, who you've got in front of you. From the Deutsche Börse side, I'll make a start, partially because I'm on the left of the picture, and also because I'm probably the one who's been at Deutsche Börse the longest. So, as Alterspräsident, I have to start. I've been in Deutsche Börse for over 20 years now. I spent most of my time not in IT. Actually, I worked on the index business, working with the DAX and stocks brands that you're probably all familiar with, and on the financial markets. But I got an opportunity about 4 years ago to start the data science activities of Deutsche Börse by starting a data science lab, which was originally on the business side, and has since migrated over to the IT side, where I now run a center of excellence for big data and automation. Basically, the technology side of enabling the business to utilize these technologies around data science, machine learning, artificial intelligence, big data, and also automation like RPA and workflow automation, stuff like that. Just briefly, my background is a long time ago, when we still put ones and nines in front of years, I studied mathematics, and later on I got a chance to do an MBA as well. So I have a somewhat technical background, but not a classical IT background. So for that, we have to go to Lars.
Thank you, Konrad. So not the Alterspräsident. I learned a new word now. So my name is Lars Polanka. I'm responsible for corporate IT at Deutsche Börse Group. So all internal IT functions that you normally would see in any other organization. In this role since 2 years, in Deutsche Börse since 4 years, and before coming from SAP. Let's say Birthright is also not IT, so I studied economics, started in finance in different roles before then moving into IT, and learning the power of IT is much more than the power of finance, at least in most cases. And since then also clearly decided never to go back outside IT, and have been in IT or in different IT roles in the last 10 years, also international. And now, how do you say, both on the, let's say, culture side, technology side, also bringing, let's say, a lot of external view into a company that is also very rich in, I would say, in history, and we'll come to this a bit later in detail. And with this, handing over to Ludwig.
Thanks, Lars, and thanks, Konrad. So I don't know if I'm the youngest, actually, but I joined last year, so I'm the
new kid on the block.
The new kid on the block, so to speak. So at the moment, I cover the position of the Chief of Staff of Prostrating IT. Prostrate is a special function, or a special, it's called the Clearstream function, more or less. We will come to that in a second, what Prostrating IT means. But I'm the Chief of Staff for the CIO of Clearstream in one life. In the other life, I also cover some information security topics for Deutsche Börse Group. I have a legacy of 10 years in strategy consulting, and I'm, I think, the only alumnus of us three from the Karlsruhe Institute of Technology. I graduated in 2008. Back then it was still University of Karlsruhe, TH, and I studied industrial engineering and management, but had also quite a lot of interactions with IT topics also during my studies. And I'm quite familiar with the Fasanengarten and also the nice city of Karlsruhe, and I'm happy to be here and to open the talk and to start to give you a bit of a background of what Deutsche Börse is, what we are doing, and yeah, so that you know that we are more than only the 5 minutes before the Tagesschau begins or our trades, etc. So first of all, I think the very nice purpose of our company, really written down in one sentence: we create trust in the market of today and tomorrow. This is our purpose. This is why we go to work every day and make it happen, to have really trusted markets, fair and transparent markets, so enabling the economy to work, so the capital markets to work. So we set up the infrastructure for trading, clearing, settlement, and so on. And I will also come to that on the next slide. What we are doing is we are really covering the whole value chain of the financial market infrastructure. This begins with the pre-trading businesses around all the indices. Konrad also briefly introduced it. I guess you all know the DAX or the stocks as most important brands, and This means we provide analytical solutions, we provide the indices for better investment decisions for corporates, but also for private persons. We, of course, have all the trading and clearing activities and companies and brands also under our umbrella. So the trading, clearing of financial instruments is done by the Börse Frankfurt. This is what you all might know or associate with Deutsche Börse. But we have also the Eurex for derivatives and C60T, for example, but also the EEX for the energy and commodities trading. And then we come to the post-trading. So after a trade has been cleared, it has to be settled, and somebody has to be the custodian of all the securities to safekeep them and also to do all the asset servicing behind. So remind you to the corporate actions when there is a general assembly or when you have a split of equities, or everything which happens after a trade is centralized and pooled in Clearstream. So this is post-trade, and I'm the chief of staff of the post-trade IT, so meaning the first officer of the CIO. And all this is bound together by information technology, obviously, because the time that you are shouting in the big tradings building is over, and everything is connected and has to be smoothly and fast and secure and reliable. So really operating and also developing further our information technology is at the heart of our business model, as you also can see here in this chart. And I think we all are very proud that it's really running very smoothly. We have a lot of different brands and also services under our umbrella. And today we want to show you how data-driven analytics help us to shape the future, and how also data-driven business models will more and more shape also our future as market infrastructure provider.
And I would say, maybe just to very quickly interrupt Ludwig, I think what, I mean, maybe some of you know, but many people don't know, is Deutsche Börse is considered also systemic relevant. So the platforms that we provide in all the areas, trading, clearing, but also post-trading, they are considered systemic relevant. Because you can be very sure that if one of the systems fails, and we recently had this also, or had a situation that, for example, if trading stops, you will find it on the first page of the newspaper, because this means that more or less everyone, institutional as well as private person, is not be able to trade, which also comes with a lot of, let's say, requirement on resilience on how we run our IT landscape. Sorry, just want to.
Yeah, thank you. And maybe to add one thing, it's a special topic. We as Deutsche Börse Group are not regulated by BaFin, but we have subsidiaries with banking licenses which are also regulated by BaFin. This brings also complexity in our operations and in our IT, but also thanks to our IT staff, we master this obligations coming from the regulation. What you see here is that we are a pretty small company, actually. I think we are the smallest company in the DAX with roughly more than 7,000 employees, but we have a really global footprint, as you see on this little globe here. And we have also over 100 nationalities in our company, because it's really nice to be here, and you have always people from different backgrounds, different nationalities, different cultural backgrounds, and also in this time of the pandemic, of course, with the video conferences, you have every day, I would say, an average 10 different nationalities in front of you. This is also why our corporate language is English. And you have flat hierarchies and a nice working environment to really unfold all your potentials. And you have also the possibility to work in different locations. We have over 30 locations and over 70 subsidiaries all over the world, but still being a big family. And to give you a bit of a glance what Deutsche Börse is in numbers, we have 2,000 IT employees roughly. We have 3 billion revenues generated in 2019 with quite a good margin also on this revenues, I would say. We have 14 trillion assets under custody, also only in the post-trade business, meaning this is the value of all the securities lying in our central security depository and also in our investment fund services platform. And also, what is quite interesting, what I really didn't know before I joined Deutsche Börse Group, we have 200 tons of gold for our gold certificates traded, etc. So they are really vaults, and there is also still a vault for every security issued in Germany. There is one really printed version of this security also lying in a vault here in Frankfurt. And for example, at the EEX, 10 times of the yearly energy consumption is traded in a year in Leipzig at the EEX. And we have 4 partners for multi-cloud. And maybe Lars can also elaborate 1 or 2 sentences on this one as his special.
Yeah, so to elaborate a bit on it, I mean, in the end, we are an IT company. I think this is what Ludwig also showed. We go across the value chain, but all of this is driven by IT. And also Deutsche Börse is, although we are regulated and in general, finance industry is being considered from an outside world as being more complex and more difficult. And of course, there's also reasons to it. On the other side, Deutsche Börse is being seen in the market, and market means both institutions as well as regulators as a reference. So basically, because we are also a market provider, people look at us how we are doing this, and we have established already roughly 2 to 3 years ago a huge cloud program, not just for the sake of running cloud, but also for the sake of we are growing globally. If you want to grow globally for a company like Deutsche Börse, we cannot build data centers in each and every locations where we are. So we basically must work with the hyperscalers. On the other side, we are also doing a lot of innovation partnerships, and you might have seen the one or other press announcement where we are working with each of them on dedicated, let's say, workloads that are specific for the finance industry. All of them having kind of a blueprint character. So this goes across, let's say, typical corporate IT landscapes, SAP environments, goes into how do you run big data in the cloud, goes about how do you analysis in the cloud, but also how do you exchange data between different institutions, just to make a few examples.
Great, thank you very much. And on the next slide, you will see the most important milestones of our history. And I just want to briefly elaborate on it. And it's also a bit small to read. But the most important point the technology and the evolving technology has always been at the core of our success, and it's in our DNA since 1820. And maybe the most important milestones are the founding of the electronic trading via Xetra in 1997, only 9 years after the DAX was introduced, and also 1 year later when we merged the SOFX and the DTB futures to the Eurex, and really had the first wave of electronic trading and automation, really leading to a competitive advantage at this point in time. Yeah? And then the second wave of major trading and clearing infrastructure with C7, T7, and also Prisma later in the 2000s and 2010s also again brought us up on the S-curve, so to speak. And when we talk about the future, digital securities and also the legislation related to that are in front of us. So we are in a good position to shape this market also, and it's also crucial for us to shape this market because a central infrastructure provider is of course challenged by decentralized technologies. But since we have the regulation in place for good reasons, and we want to know how to deal with regulation, we are in a good position to develop this market and to shape this market. And we have also the data-driven business, which is really important for us, and especially underpinned by Konrad Center of Excellence, which was founded, I think, back in 2016 and was renamed in 2019 for the big data.
You forgot to put it on your slide. That's for sure.
Sorry, I didn't get it. You can.
I said you forgot to put it on your slide. But
yes. So I put it on the voice slide. This was the important thing. And the 3 key strengths is we have an infrastructure which is capable of dealing with high volumes and a high robustness. We have operational excellence and process stability and reliability. And we are a reputable infrastructure provider associated with us is stability, transparency, and fairness in trading associated. We are very proud of, and now Konrad, I think, is leading us to the next section.
Sure. Yeah. So we've come up with a 4-line title, which is probably a big no-no. So I'm going to jump over that really quickly and get to what we actually want to talk about. So I mean, I think as Ludwig and Lars have alluded, I mean, Deutsche Börse is an IT company, and there's loads of really exciting IT stuff happening. So if you think about the trading platforms and the delivery of data in sort of nanosecond speed for the high frequency trading community, there's a lot of very interesting topics. But we thought for today, we try to focus a little bit on what we call the new tech parts and talk to you about how we are applying things out of the world of machine learning, AI, data science in Deutsche Börse world. So Lars and I will run you through, let's say, a couple of examples of where we're already using or planning to use those technologies in our IT applications in different sort of places across that value chain, that end-to-end value chain of the financial services business or the financial trading business that Ludwig has outlined. So I'll go through those very briefly, but we're going to sort of one, talk about new products and services that we can generate. Two, which probably is the sort of staple use for machine learning, which is around creating operational efficiencies using AI and decision automation. We're going to talk about how we use these technologies to make life easier and better for our customers as well as our employees through deploying automatic artificial intelligence solutions. And lastly, Lars is going to briefly touch on a reference data case that is also very interesting in terms of bringing data together for a big group that's data driven. So I'm going to sort of start with the new services cluster. It's always the most difficult one from a business case perspective because you don't know what people really want. And when we started the data science lab, this was actually a slide that we had very early on, and I'm happy to report that we actually made some progress on that. So when we looked at doing big data at Deutsche Börse, at the beginning you think that must be a home run, right? You've got a completely digitized business. Ludwig mentioned it, 1997, electronic trading completely. Everything's there. You've got tons of data, but then the question comes as to where can you actually add value with data science? We've had a very successful business in selling the raw data on the exchange, and we thought, so how can we add value? And if you remember the mission that Ludwig stated around creating trust in markets, we felt that we could use data science, machine learning, predictive analytics in order to create services that actually increase the trust in markets and make them more stable. So we coined this term of predictive maintenance in financial services. So you all probably know much better than me that one of the sort of go-to use cases for machine learning is predictive maintenance. So figuring out when the robotic arm is going to fail before it actually fails, so you can service it or replace the necessary part in the downtime without causing disruption to your business, or the intelligent truck that knows when to exchange its brakes and sort of makes that stop on the way from logistics stop A to B, directly integrated with the logistics system. So that is something that when we look at Deutsche Börse, we don't manufacture anything, we don't really produce anything, and we don't have a bunch of trucks running through the world that we need to maintenance. But the markets that we're running, they do also require maintenance. So we do need to ensure the integrity of those markets. So if some of you follow the stock market, there's a long while ago, but I was unfortunately already still at Deutsche Börse. There was a short squeeze in the Volkswagen stock, briefly making Volkswagen the most expensive security, the biggest company in the world, simply because Porsche was basically trying to do a sort of reverse takeover type of thing and hog the shares. So the Volkswagen price went from like 70 euros to over 1,000 euros in a single day because of a market, let's say, disruption. And we had the idea of saying, can we use the data that we have in order to detect these anomalies in the markets and actually create services that help our customers avoid those things. And so we didn't exactly build something for the sort of black swan event that is Volkswagen, or if you follow the sort of Reddit forums in the US, then maybe it's GameStop right now, which is actually experiencing a similar situation. But we are, for example, dealing with something like we call a settlement failure. So as Ludwig outlined, we don't just deal with the trade, but we also deal with the whole part that comes after the trade, where the security is moved from account A to account B. So once a trade is made, and you can, I guess, vaguely compare this to eBay, but so you agreed to buy that used iPhone from Schnucki Putzi 123, and you're hoping that they're gonna send it to you. You're not going to be particularly pleased if that doesn't arrive. And actually, in fact, that sort of scenario also happens in trading, in over-the-counter trading, where bilateral trades are made, and we are responsible for the settlement. So we do find cases where the buyer doesn't deliver the money, or the seller doesn't deliver the securities. And that actually causes major disruptions, because often, as you know, securities are resold continuously, and one failure in the chain actually causes a big ripple effect backwards. To make things worse, the regulators are introducing penalties for non-delivery of either cash or securities, which can be very, very high for big trading banks. So we've been able to create machine learning, essentially, for those of you who care about this sort of stuff, a random forest-based model that trains on the entire data set of the historical transactions and the historical information that we obviously have about whether something's failed or not failed. And we can make available to our clients a dashboard and an API where they can enter a transaction and get a feedback as to what the likelihood of the failure of that transaction is, which sort of gives them two options. One, they can do this pre-trade and sort of figure out if they want to do the trade in the first place, because maybe the benefit that comes from the trade gets eaten up by the loss that you make later on in paying fines for the settlement. Or you can use it in back office operations in order to streamline your operation and figure out whether you have some sort of tsunami of failures coming towards you and hitting you. And both of those, in the end, actually deliver value to our clients in a sense that they can run their trading operation more efficiently, they can make better trades, and we end up providing a better market, and we can obviously monetize that service. So that's cluster one. And cluster two is all about automation and generating efficiencies. And again, this is machine learning. This is an actual model that's been running since May of last year. It's one of the first machine learning models that we put into production out of the data science lab. And this is basically the sort of starting job that you don't imagine to have. And hopefully at Deutsche Börse, we won't have very many of those jobs anymore. There's a bunch of people sitting in Prague, sifting through 10,000 messages that weren't addressed properly, or that had some issue in terms of their routing information. So you can compare this literally to a post office worker who has to look at all the envelopes where people haven't bothered to write the right address on, and trying to figure out where things go. And in that process that we had previously, we had an overall success rate of 78%. So 78% of the messages that came in a central messaging hub got transferred to the correct secondary department to process it. And it took us about 4.5 days on average to actually correct that mistake and then actually process the transaction in the right place. With machine learning, this is sort of your data scientist's dream, in a sense of that you have a whole bunch of historical information, millions of transactions with the correct routing information. So you have a perfectly labeled data set, and you can just throw this into a machine learning algorithm, and you can create a model that, in our case now, does the same task with a 97% success rate without the need for any human intervention at all. And so we're dealing with the whole messaging bunch fully automated through machine learning. And then to step up the game a little bit, and I would be lying if I said this was in production. So this is more something that we are aspiring and researching. So I guess in addition to the hands-on projects where we're looking to concretely implement something where we think there's a high chance of success, we do also invest in more explorative projects where we're trying to apply new technologies to more complex problems, knowing that it'll probably take a few years until this stuff reaches the production grade that we need it to have. But here you basically have a deep neural net approach that we're currently running, where you have a corporate action that is complex. So corporate action is something like a dividend dividend payment, a coupon payment, something like that. But in this case, we're talking about so-called voluntary corporate actions where the investor has a choice. So it's a choice, for example, whether you want to receive a cash dividend or a dividend in shares. And that is typically not described in a structured format, but somebody actually goes and sits down and types down what should happen into a long free text field in the Swift message. But in order for us to process it, we need to actually put it into a structured output that we can put into our post-trading processes to actually, pay the right money or send people the right letter to choose whether they want cash or shares. And here we've sort of started to experiment with a DNN at the moment. It's a sort of relatively small one in 2 hidden layers, and we're currently able to produce 182 fields that we can predict or that we can extract with a sufficient accuracy. Fortunately, there's a few more fields that we still need to work on. And we also do obviously require to test this a lot in production. So it's currently running in sort of test mode, and we're currently monitoring the results. But this is sort of the sort of stuff that data scientists working at Deutsche Börse are actually looking at on a day-to-day basis. And with that, Lars, I've talked enough. I think you should take over.
Thank you, Konrad. So I would most probably start with the bit easier case. So things most probably most of you will know also from, let's say, from private life, is we are working a lot on how can you use machine learning and also, let's say, natural language understanding. So this is kind of semantics and machine learning for how do you improve user experience and employee experience. In the end, employees are internal. Users can be internal or can be external, and everyone who is regular using his or her bank basically recognizes that still a lot in let's say the financial industry today is being done manually, right? So when you do account opening, if you don't take N26 Bank now as an example, but more the typical Sparkasse or something else, then you still have to go there. You have to file in some paper. When you want to have changes, then you have to write forms. At the year end, you get, let's say, some annual statements and so on. So all of this is somehow paper-based. Even if you get it as a PDF instead of post-mail, it's still paper-based. What they all have in common is, in the end, there is in today's world, you see that the behavior and the expectation of people is consumer-driven. And consumer-driven means people want to have quick answers, precise answers, and so on. And there is no difference between inside the company and outside the company. What we are trying to do is, of course, we try to take the learnings that we have internal for the outside world, from the outside world to the inside world. And to kind of give 2 examples to this, where we are using this already internally. It's a very easy one. It's all about how do you handle IT tickets. So the typical end user problems: a computer not working, phone not working, cable is broken, so everything you can imagine. And all of this, if everyone picks up the phone, and you take the roughly 7,000 employees, and each of them is calling once a day, you have 7,000 calls a day. This is not, let's say, very, how to say, it doesn't scale. And also often you will find out that a lot of the problems that people have over time is more or less the same, but they differ in the way how they get articulated. So the way my notebook is broken or my notebook doesn't work, you can say in 1,000 different ways, but in the end, it is the notebook is not working. So what we have to find out through natural language understanding, where we try to use a bot already today in a constant learning phase, is how can we train the bot to help you and to find out what exactly does not work with your notebook, despite that there is 1,000 ways of saying how it doesn't work. And the more we can automate, of course, the less we can or the less calls are hitting us on the let's say help or the support teams, and the more they can focus on training the bot. So it's kind of a bit of chicken and egg, but rather than, how do you say, enriching our day with 1,000 calls, we are trying to as much as possible to train those bots. And on the other side, also to take this learning as a constant learning. So this is what we call collective learning. So with each interaction, we validate against the constantly growing, let's say, knowledge bases. And either we have already knowledge or articles available, or we have to, let's say, of course, enhance the basis. And for this, we are also using, or we are relying on cloud native services. So in our case, we are using Azure, for example, because they have already OCR. So if people are sending pictures, then we can recognize which system they have issues with, which applications they have issues with, and so on. Of course, this takes time. I mean, Deutsche Börse, Ludwig was showing before, many locations, many different teams, many different business models. So of course, such a learning takes time, but this is where we are actively using it. It's still in the pilot phase. So we have roughly 100 users today that are already using this simply for validating also false positives. And we start the same to do with the HR side. So the typical HR tickets, I'm sick, I'm on sick leave, my payslip is missing, it's wrong, things like this. On the other side, we are using exactly the same for the customer-facing side. So when we speak about post-trade, we have a dedicated team or dedicated organization, which is called Client Services. Client Services is really dealing with all the institutions, be it on the investment fund side, global funds like the BlackRocks and so on, institutional clients and so on. And what they are doing is, on one side, really also helping the clients. So if a client says, hey, my account statement is wrong, my tax statement is wrong, then of course someone has to take care of this. But also if people are, for example, moving cash between accounts, right? Because if you have large investment funds with hundreds of, let's say, sub-accounts, then of course they're moving cash positions or similar. All of this is mainly still manual, either sending emails, calling someone from the client service team. What we are doing here is, and we are speaking roughly 20,000 transactions per day, just to give you also a volume, and only for the post-trade part. So we are not even speaking the whole Deutsche Börse group. And what we are doing is also here using, let's say, conversational AI to learn and automate this, simply for the sake of a lot of those requests are repetitive, but in different types. And examples here are we can provide recommendations, we can do partial recommendations, we can do so-called predictive scheduling. So if a customer is asking for, let's say, changes next month, then we can do this automatically without someone, how do you say, putting it in the Outlook calendar or similar. So this is what we are doing. This is a learning journey, and we are doing this in parallel, internal and external. And here we are also collaborating, as we said before, with the hyperscalers, because they have exactly the same issues, right? So this is on the first part. If you go to the next page.
Do you need another next page or this one?
It's coming. Thank you. It was a bit of delay. So what you see here is a bit of the example of such a chain. So this is just to make it more tangible. You have an incoming request from a client side, and as said, this can be internal or external. It runs directly into the ticket intelligence. Ticket intelligence is kind of pre-selecting and or pre-deciding. And or extracting documentation. So there's different things that the intelligence can do. It can also recognize where is the person coming from. Is an internal person, external, customer, non-customer, and so on. And can then decide, does it require a manual interaction? So does it need to get routed to a service agent, or can it be taken care of by the bot? And then basically all of this significantly reduces the time to interaction. So in parts of the, how do you say, in parts of the business, we are in interaction times less than 1 hour. Of course, this does not always work because sometimes we have timestamps, but these are the things how we are using this already today. And we are constantly, let's say, expanding the services. We have now first clients even who also are jumping on this because they are then often, so if the client is a bank, for example, then the bank has end customers and we are kind of expanding this chain even down to the end customer. So this is kind of just an example how things work. And the plan is from today, roughly 30% going the automated way and 70% going still the manual way, that we earlier or later can change this. So if we then go to the next page. didn't think that was a question, but the questions I would say we put for the Q&A question. I think it was Mr. Hartmann or so. Another example, and this goes back to what Konrad had in his use case one, is about finance reference data. So Deutsche Börse is running millions and hundreds of millions transactions per day across the value chain. And each of these transactions produces so-called reference data. Reference data, in easy words, is if you type Deutsche Börse in Google or Deutsche Börse share price, then you will find the share price today, the share price historically, the ISIN number, how many pieces are around, what is the market evaluation, since when are they in the market, things like this. All of this we call reference data. And those reference data, we, on a very, very simplified level, I mean, this topic is very complex, but on a very simplified level, we distinguish in 3 data streams. We call it customer and counterparty data, price, trading, and rating, and then instrument and institution data. And just to show the complexity, because there's also a current project that we are running on, when we speak about customer master data, so if you ask a colleague or your neighbor what they think about customer master data, then often you get like company name, maybe the name of the contact person, address, zip code, and that's it. We have only for the customer data side more than 4,500 attributes, and we are just speaking customer data. If you speak about instrument data, it can go up to 20,000 attributes. So the material is very, very complex. And all of them are changing either by minute, partially by day, partially by week, so different timestamps. What we are doing now is, number one, on the technology side, changing the way how do we share those data. Because as Konrad said, the ambition level is that we are not just producing those data, but that we are also sharing those data internally and externally, monetizing them and thinking about how can we use, for example, predictive analytics around it. And this requires first that you make those data available in a more simple format than it exists today. Second is we are also changing data models. Historically, things like normalization, you don't do anymore today, at least in most of the data models. So we really have to touch historically grown data models and change them completely. We have to look into data services. We have to look into data validation. So there's a lot of things to do. We are speaking of terabytes of data. And this is something where we have also, at the moment, one person or one colleague, let's say alumnus in Ludwig's words, also from the KIT, who is really working on this data modeling and data analysis. Of course, he always said, Lars, bring me 2 or 3 clones, then we can, of course, go faster. So this is what we are working on also as we kind of speak. And I think with this, we are coming to the next page. I think it goes back to...
Yes, goes back to me. Thank you, Lars and Konrad, and for this multitude of different use cases of data, automation, artificial intelligence, and so on. And I began also with a bit elaborating on the post-trading side, which is maybe not so familiar to people who are not in this business-to-business context, but it's a very interesting topic technology-wise, all this securities safeguarding and the custodian side of us. And it's also very important from a business point of view, because the important thing is that the Clearstream business is the second most important revenue generator for Deutsche Börse Group after Eurex. So the cash market, you know, from the TV or from your own trades is not the most important revenue stream of our group here. So Clearstream is for sure a very important business also, and a business which is more and more tech enabled and where we can really get a competitive advantage when we develop in the right direction, because it's clearly at the tipping point at the moment, as I said in the beginning, a market or a business model as ours, which is providing central infrastructure, is naturally being more or less disrupted or threatened by decentralized technologies. Yeah, so just to name the obvious, blockchain, who could be something which makes central markets obsolete theoretically, is of course something we have to take very serious, and which is also very interesting from the technology side. And we are at the pole position to shape the market and also to develop the market of post-trading further. So this disruption is clearly anticipated by us, and we are also acting in the sense of that we have a big transformation program on the post-trade side, on the business side, on the operation side, and the IT side, working well together. And previously you saw 4 very interesting use cases for people who are interested in information technology, data, machine learning, and so on. And this is something which you can deploy in corporate IT for the internal customers, for the external customers, and in Clearstream, where we, of course, mostly deal with external customers, so the big banks of this world or the big asset management companies of this world, we will have really a tremendous demand of new staff members with an educational background like you bring with you. So we are really mostly interested in having you in our company, especially in the post-trading environment, because in the next, and it's a bit selfish for me to make this advertisement, because I know that also Lars and Konrad need good people. So in the end, it could be an internal fight or war for talents, but we are all, fighting.
We'll let the people choose where they want to.
Yes, but since I, being first officer of my boss, I have the clear action card to make some post-trade side. But now, joking aside, I mean, on the post-trade side, we have this transformation program. We have a new leadership team in place. Me being one of the new kids on the block, as said in the beginning. And the very important thing with all the new technologies we want to put in place also in Konrad's and Lars' environment, you will be the experts. It's not the colleagues who are working with us for 10, 20, or even 30 years, which is not seldom the case. Yeah? We have very low fluctuation, which is great for us. Unfortunately, at some point in time, of course, people are going to be retired and enjoy the last third or maybe half of their life. But this means that they will also not be expert in anything around big data, cloud automation, multi-cloud approaches, containerization, and so on, and also the blockchain. So you will be the expert when graduating from university or PhD. You bring everything with you, which really helps us to develop our IT and our business, and which will help you immediately right from the beginning to have a great start with us. So you are the experts who will really make the change happen, and you will find a leadership environment who really fosters change and really wants to develop you as persons, as professionals. And we have also, I think this is quite important to mention, an interesting career model when you join Deutsche Börse Group, because you have 3 possibilities to join Deutsche Börse Group, or to develop within Deutsche Börse Group. We have an expert path, we have a project management path, and we have a leadership path. Each of those paths being equally important and gives you equal possibilities of stepping up the career ladder. I think only in the last step before the Exco, it's only the leadership level, but before Exco, you can be an expert up to a very high level. You can be a project manager or program manager for big change projects, or you can, of course, have also a leadership career within Deutsche Börse Group, which truly distinguishes us from other competitors in the market. And I've seen quite a lot of competitors in the FS space, and also throughout the European financial services industry, and also in other German companies. So you have really find a good place to start your career and also to develop your career. And on the next slide, you will see a bit more a technical approach to Clearstream, where I don't want to go into too many details, but you see in the moment we come from monolithic building blocks in the post-trading environment, and one of the most important challenges will be to transform this monolithic building blocks, partly still running on big IBM mainframes here in Frankfurt, and to transform those to really cloud hybrid ecosystems with all the buzzwords, be it agility, be it DevOps. We want to have a scalable, efficient, and reliable hybrid ecosystem based on a multi-cloud approach with an OpenShift containerization approach in between. Information security by design will be key. Everything also around data inventory, classification, privacy, and so on, and also leveraging on new tech, as said, big data analytics, APIs, and DLT. And just to name a few use cases, when it comes to settlement, Konrad already outlined use cases for big data, so the predictive settlement failures is very important. But also when it comes to e-securities, yeah, when we have multi-market settlements in the end, in the target state, where clients choose whether they want to settle against a token network or central bank money, for example, yeah. Or when we speak about the issuance process, when you issue new securities, so when we say we feed the machine with new securities, so in the target state is the digital issuance processes provide smart contracts and also the reference data supporting Clearstream's client issuance network. So this will be really a lot of value also for our customers, which we can create out of those digital use cases. And what we for sure need is a scalable, flexible ecosystem, which we still have to build. I mean, there's something, when you see the right part of this chart, a lot of things are already partly in place, but not fully implemented. So this open architecture approach is kind of a target state we are developing towards. Or maybe Lars, you can also maybe elaborate on the multi-cloud approach a bit in this setup.
I mean, in the end, and this goes back to what you, Ludwig, said before, is I mean, multi-cloud is only one thing. We are speaking mainly about infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, but in the end, it also comes to all the skills that you can run on top of a cloud. So be it independent, whether it's new tech, information security, already working on data. Our ambition level is simply to be fast, and fast you are never if you build things yourself. At least not that are a commodity like infrastructure, but there we are relying on the hyperscalers because if you start, for example, big data, you want to have your machine running today or tomorrow, not in 6 months from now. And this is something, so everything we do and everything you see on the left side with the building blocks, we have already started to establish or we have it already in place, is the respective technology to also allow the speed that we are looking for.
Yeah. We will for sure have a bit more financial services related also kind of tasks, be it credit risk margining, model building around all the banking and funds financing business, which is also part of Clearstream, for example. And when it comes then on the next slide, when it comes to what we are looking for, we are looking for you, well-educated, smart people we want to hire, and because without the people we are nothing. We have some computers or some cloud applications and clouds running, and we have the people thinking of how to develop smart solutions in tech and also transform it to a successful business. So what are we looking for? We are really specifically looking for juniors meaning the age of the people and not the experience, as I outlined before. We are clearly looking for, of course, also males, but also non-males. So we really want to raise the non-male quota within Deutsche Börse Group and especially within Clearstream. All the educational backgrounds from mathematics, engineering, but also from finance, financial markets, and also the human sciences are more than welcome. We need profiles like project managers also dealing at the intersection of business and IT, but we need for sure developers, IT architects, IT operations guys, and functional business analysts. And you will also have the possibility to rotate. When you begin your career at Deutsche Börse Group, you can, of course, begin in Prostrating, then you can go to the Eurex, for example, and do the next step at the EEX, and you have a senior leadership position after 10 years, maybe in the Contigo index environment, yeah, or also in our latest acquisition, the ISS, which is heavily also involved in the ESG business. So you have really the possibility also to change within the group. So when you start in Prostrate, it's we are happy to educate you and to be some to kickstart your career, but it's not that you have to work for Clearstream all the time you're here. So we are also living the exchange. And when it comes to training and upskilling, which is very important also as a part of our DNA and of our culture, we have really a true teamwork culture from day one. Since I worked here, I really appreciated that and valued that, with highly professional colleagues, but also colleagues you can drink a beer, hopefully not only virtually in 2021. We need social, intelligent, open-minded colleagues, curious and also fun to work with. all the skills, I mean, you will bring them with you, cloud, agile, continuous integration, APIs and microservices. And as also outlined in the beginning, we are searching mainly for Frankfurt, Prague, Luxembourg, and Cork. And for you, Frankfurt might be the most interesting location. But also you will have the possibility to rotate around the globe within Deutsche Börse Group.
Yeah. I would just add maybe 2 points to what Ludwig said. I think the first one is, and this is very important, both, let's say, culture as well as speed and the way of working Deutsche Börse is significantly changing. And while you see a lot of other financial institutes either reducing offices, reducing, let's say, the local subsidiaries, reducing workforce, we are doing the opposite. We are heavily investing in new tech. We are heavily investing in changing, let's say, our business model in the end, right? So both what Ludwig said on the post-trade side, but also in the other areas, it's really about changing the business models. And changing business models always comes with changing IT. And the roles that can contribute, and also I mean, we have even colleagues, as I said before, from KIT already working for us. It's less about the years of experience, but it's more about the mindset of being, let's say, open, eager to learn, very quickly understand, and at least I make this now really as a practical case. The colleague who's just started like 3 months ago, if you would ask me, he has overtaken a lot of the other colleagues in 3 months, not by history, because you cannot outperform 30 years of history, but in terms of really understanding the data, the logical dependencies of them, and kind of getting this into completely different models. And these are things where which also show that he doesn't need to be 10 years in Deutsche Börse, but more needs to have this eagerness to very quickly learn, understand, take the structure, build a network. But on the other side, it gives you a lot of freedom to work, because we are still, as we said at the very beginning, a rather small company. So I would not say a family culture, but close to, which means it's not like high hierarchies, a lot of asking and so on, but it's wide field of you can run yourself, you can develop yourself personally, as well as taking ownership for the topics that you drive. And they really go from hardcore IT, so speaking really about developing, engineering, data architecting through data analyst down to project management, basically on the other side. So really there's everything for everyone. And for us, it's important that we get really, how do you say, new mindset, new colleagues on board to help us drive this mission and drive this change.
Maybe if I just quickly add something, right? I mean, I think also what we need is a mindset that's open to new technologies to sort of kind of grow within the core IT products that we have. So I think that's my personal experience 4 years ago when we started with the first machine learning models. We had trouble finding people in the IT products that would be willing to deploy them or even think about them. I think that's already changed. That's changing, but that continues to change. And I think the sort of level of education that graduates today have with regards to new technologies and the mindset with regards to adopting them is actually a big asset that the fresh graduate that comes freshly into the job has over the 30-year veteran. And I think, though, what we offer is that combination of having a 30-year industry veteran sitting next on the next desk with the graduate that brings all the new tech know-how. I think that's really where cool things happen, and that's where we're bringing this industry forward.
Yeah. So to sum it up, we want you, and I think you have a great place to grow and to develop your skills and your career, and you will have a lot of fun, and you will also create trust in the markets of today and tomorrow, together with us in a nice region around Frankfurt or Luxembourg or Prague or even Cork. So I would say from our side, let's call it a day, being the PowerPoint slide. Now shoot to your questions and answers.